Uh, Today's class, for anybody who's interested, apparently won't be on D2L because there's no signal to the camera. I can't see any light that indicates it's on. So it'll be on YouTube later on today. Got to make sure I'm in the right class. What we got? Today we're picking up with Book 2, Chapter 1, and we're going to kind of fly. So Frodo wakes up. They're at Rivendell, and Gandalf is at his side when he awakens. Frodo asks about Sam and everybody else, how everybody else is. Gandalf says they're fine. And Frodo asks, what, bottom of the first page, which is 219, Frodo asks, what happened at the fort? It all seems so dim somehow, and it still does. Why did it seem dim? He was fading. He was falling under the control of the ring, partially, at the very least, because he had all 9 Black Riders, however many feet away from him. 20 feet, 30 feet, 50 feet. We're not told how wide the Bruin is, but anyways. Gandalf, yes, it would. That is, it would seem dim. You were beginning to fade. The wound was overcoming you at last. A few more hours, and you would have been beyond our A. Now, what helped slow the power of the wound? We didn't talk about this at all. We don't have time, but I'm going to do it anyways. Strider found an herb. He mentions the herb is named Avalus. It's going to come up again later on. Okay, in Return of the King, I don't remember exactly. I think it's in book 6. And he breaks the herb and it produces this kind of pungent smell, and their spirits feel a little bit better and such by the smell and such. So he bathes Frodo's wound in that, and that's, kind of helps stop the spread. It doesn't stop the spread, but it slows it, so to speak. A few more hours and you would have been beyond our A, but you have some strength in you, my dear Hobbit, as you showed in the barrow. Okay? What did he show in the barrow? Remember, they were all taken control of by the Barrow Wight. Wight's just it's an English word that means person/creature. Okay? And it's a ghost, essentially, from the barrow. It took them into its barrow and was going to keep them there. And Frodo, if you remember the scene, Frodo has this moment of clarity when he realizes, I could escape. I could be out of here. Sucks for them, but, I can live. And then, that Hobbit sense kicks into gear and he says, no, I can't. He starts to sing the song Tom Bombadil taught them, calls Tom Bombadil, blah, blah, blah. Okay? That was touch and go. That is, there in the barrow, whew, man. The most dangerous moment of all, Gandalf says, perhaps. I wish you could have held out at Weathertop. You know a lot. I haven't told anybody else about the barrow. You've talked in your sleep. Why do people, possibly, what's one reason, they talk in their sleep?
Minds are trying to process things.
Exactly. Okay? It's kind of getting it out there, so to speak. Okay? He says, and it has not been hard for me to read your mind and memory. All right? I don't think I've ever really thought about that passage before. Gandalf can read minds. Something to think about. Frodo, we could have done it without Strider. Oh, where were you? I was delayed. Okay? So, Gandalf says, Elrond has ordered, you're not to talk about this, blah, blah, blah. Frodo, I'll feel better if I do. It would stop me thinking and wondering. What does he mean by wondering? Does he mean like, being full of wonder, looking around at Elrond's house, No. What he could have done differently, what he could have done better, or, as C.S. Lewis kind of puts it in several of the Chronicles of Narnia, the what might have beens. Okay? And if you're familiar with Chronicles of Narnia, you know that Aslan tells people, you can never know the what might have beens. Why? Because they never were. Speculating about the what might have beens, as Frodo did at the beginning of the novel, right? I wish it had never come to me. That's what if it had. Okay. So, they talk a little bit more. And Frodo says, oh, so you knew about the Black Riders? He said, yes. We talked about them. They're the ring wraiths, the 9 servants of the Lord of the Rings. I did not know they'd arisen again, or I should have fled with you at once. He says, I only heard news of them after I left you in June. But at that point, it was too late for him to go back. Okay? So they talk about Strider again, and Gandalf says, Sam now trusts Strider. And then Frodo says, bottom of 220. I've become very fond of Strider. Well, fond isn't the right word. I mean, he's dear to me, though he is strange and grim at times. In fact, he reminds me often of you. I didn't know that any of the big people were like that. I thought, that they were just big and rather stupid. Kind and stupid like Butterbur, or stupid and wicked like Bill Ferny. Wait a second. Oh, that's right. Stupid and wicked like Bill Ferny. But then we don't know much about men in the Shire, except perhaps the Brelanders. Okay, so what is Frodo telling us there that he... How do I put this? Prior to meeting Strider, what does Frodo tell us that he kind of suffered from? About the big people. Us. Louder? Okay, naive? Thank you. I was going to say it's a very innocent way of, wholesome way of looking at it. What did you say? They were prejudiced. The hobbits, Frodo, I won't generalize. Frodo was prejudiced against the big people. Why? He thought they were big and rather stupid. And who does he give an example of that? Bill Ferny. More so than Barliman. Is Barliman big and stupid? He's not very big. Stupid? What characterizes Barliman Butterbur?
He's very busy.
He's very busy, okay? So, how does that make him? He's forgetful. He's got so many things going on. He forgets things easily, okay? Bill Ferny? Is he forgetful? Is he busy? No, what's another way to describe Bill Ferny? He's bad. He's rotten. Hagrid would say, rotten to the core, through and through, all right? Gandalf, you don't know much even about them. That is, Barliman, if you think Barliman Butterbur is stupid. Okay? But the them is really about humanity. So, what does it take to, possibly at least, help defeat, remove prejudicial ideas? Look, louder. Exposure. Notice what the word prejudice literally means. What's the next part? Judgment. You form an idea without what? Without any information to base that idea on. Okay? Gandalf, he is wise enough on his own ground. Thinks less than he talks. Okay, and I think Gandalf is telling us that's an element of wisdom. Okay? And slower. Yet he can see through a brick wall in time, as they say in Bree. Okay? So he goes on and they start talking about Strider. Frodo, do you really mean Strider is one of the people of the old kings? I thought they'd all vanished long ago. I thought he was only a ranger. My dear Frodo, that is just what the Rangers are. The last remnant in the north of the great people, the men of the west. They have helped me before, and I shall need their help. Blah, 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 blah. Okay? So we find out Frodo's been there for a few days. Get to the bottom of the next page. Frodo wants to know, is Rivendell safe? Are the elves safe? Safe against what?
His immediate danger is Black Riders.
Black Riders and, by extension, Sauron. Okay? What he's really asking is, can Elrond hold out? Can Elrond be, a fortress against the evil that is out there? Bottom of 222. At present, until all else is conquered. The elves may fear the Dark Lord and may fly before him, but never again will they listen to him or serve him. And here in Rivendell there live still some of his chief foes, the Elven Wise, lords of the Eldar, name of the race of elves, from beyond the further seas. They do not fear the ring race, for those who have dwelt in the blessed realm, that's the realm of the gods, Valinor, that you can no longer just hop in a boat and sail across the sea and get to. Okay? Some people can, elves, okay, but everybody else can't. For those who have dwelt in the blessed realm live at once in both worlds. But physics says impossible. You can't be in two places at once. It's not that kind of both worlds. In against both the seen, here, and the unseen, the other world, but the other world is not a world over there. It's where? It's here. They have great power. Frodo, I thought that I saw a white figure, that Shauna did not grow dim like the others. Was that Glorfindel then? Yes, you saw him for a moment as he is upon the other side. That is, if you could see all of reality, not just what you see around you, Frodo, but the unseen also, one of the mighty of the firstborn. In other words, you would see Glorfindel, let's use a term Gandalf used earlier, uncloaked. It's almost like Glorfindel's flesh, almost like, okay? Notice, I'm using an analogy or a simile because there's no other way to talk about it, okay? It's almost like his flesh is hiding his real essence. It isn't really, okay? He is an elf lord and a house of princes. There is a power in Rivendell to withstand the might of Mordor for a while. Elrond is kind of the same. Galadriel is kind of the same. If you were to really see them as they are, as C.S. Lewis says in one of the things he wrote, you would probably fall down and worship them. Lewis is talking about something else there entirely, but it applies. Okay? He says there's a power too of another kind in the Shire. Not this kind of power. Notice, he doesn't explain what that power is. He doesn't tell Frodo, or he doesn't pull out a bellows and start building up Frodo. He just says, Frodo, you have a kind of power too. Well, we know it's not strength, heart, and wits, right? He's not doing too bad thus far on the wits and heart part. Strength, not really, okay? So, Frodo asks about the flood that he saw. He saw horsemen on horses. And Gandalf says, well, I kind of threw a little special effects in there. Elrond has a spell on the flood so that if any enemies touch the water, the river rises and washes them away. And he says, I added that. So Sam comes in, and they talk and such. 226. We see Glorfindel at the bottom of the page. Right? Tall, straight, shining gold hair, His face is fair and young and fearless and full of joy. Notice, young. And yet Glorfindel is thousands of years old. But he's immortal. So he doesn't look like he ages a day. Okay? Face of Elrond was ageless, neither old nor young, etc., etc. And there's other people. We're going to skip a bunch. He meets Glóin, Gimli's son. He meets Glóin from The Hobbit, one of the dwarves that Bilbo met, and then meets Gimli, Glóin's son, and such. And let's go on to, I think we can skip all the rest of that. Yeah. On to chapter 2, Council of Elrond. Now, Tolkien in the preface, not in the preface, in the foreword of the second edition, said that Shadow of the Past was the crucial chapter. Crucial. Related to the word for crux. Okay? That is, everything meets right there. Well, I would argue this is the second crucial chapter. There are two all-important ones. Shadow of the Past and the Council of Elrond. If you're familiar with the film, wipe that abomination out of your mind. Because this is nothing like what they do in the film. It's like, there's not enough suspense in this chapter. I won't say what I want to say. So, Frodo's kind of introduced, and we are introduced via Frodo, page 240. Okay? There's a younger dwarf at Glóin's side, his son Gimli. Beside Glorfindel, there are several other counselors of Elrond's household. Okay? Eristor and Galdor and Círdan the shipwright. Círdan is older than Galadriel, if I remember right. I think, I'm not positive, I'd have to go back, it might be in the appendices. I think he's one of the originally awakened elves. Made by the song of the Ainur in the Silmarillion. I think. I'm not positive about that, okay? And there's a tall man with a fair, noble face, dark-haired, gray-eyed, proud, stern of glance, etc., etc. Gandalf introduces him. It's Boromir. Okay? So, Glóin speaks up. Elrond, kind of gavels, the meeting to order, so to speak. And Glóin talks about what's been going on with the dwarves. Balin went off to Moria to refound the dwarvish kingdom, blah, 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 blah. And then about 30 years ago, silence. And they haven't heard a word since. Then somebody from Mordor came to the dwarves and, said that they would restore the rings to the dwarves if they could return the trifle of Sauron. Okay? Top of 242. Elrond says, "You have done well to come. You will hear today all that you need in order to understand the purposes of the enemy." Notice, you're going to hear what you need to know so that you can understand what Sauron is about. The purposes. Why does he want this ring? Why this trifle? Okay? Is he going to tell them are they going to learn everything? No, they're not. They're going to learn what they need to know. There is naught that you can do other than to resist, with hope or without it. Okay, now think about that statement. You can do nothing to resist Sauron. You can do that with hope, or you can do it without hope. If you do it without hope, then what's your motivation? Despair. If you do it with hope, then, maybe you'll squeak through this. But you do not stand alone. In other words, you dwarves back there at the Lonely Mountain, you won't be alone. Others will stand with you. You will learn that your trouble is but part of the trouble of all the Western world. The ring. What shall we do with the ring? The least of rings, the trifle that Sauron fancies. That is the doom, judgment, that we must deem, judge. Modern English word deem is the verb form for doom, the noun. Doom doesn't mean utter destruction. We're going to see shortly, a poem's going to be recited that Boromir is going to interpret as the doom, the judgment, the destruction of Minas Tirith. And Aragorn is going to, notice I'm going to use the correct name. He's no longer Strider. He's Aragorn. Aragorn is going to correct him. He's going to say, it didn't say the destruction of Minas Tirith. Okay? That is the purpose for which you were called. And then notice what he says. Called, I say, though I have not called you to me, strangers from distant lands. So if Elrond didn't call them to Rivendell, who did? Did the ring? Did it send out, telepathic messages? Go to Rivendell, where my doom will be judged. No. How about the same power that was behind the power of the designer of the ring when it determined Bilbo should find the ring? And that if Bilbo was meant to have the ring, therefore Frodo was meant to have the Menor that we referred to back there, that I referred to. You have come and are here met in this very nick of time, by chance, as it may seem. Yet it is not so. What is wrong here? He says, by chance, as it may, what's the verb? Seem. Seem is a subjunctive verb. Subjunctive. If something seems some way, then what are we being told about that thing? It isn't. It appears that way. Subjunctive is a condition contrary to fact. If I won the lottery yesterday, I wouldn't be here today. I would. I'd, finish out the semester, then I'd say sayonara, right? But that's a condition contrary to fact. If I was 6 inches taller, if I still had good knees, if, right? Those are all what? Subjunctive and pie in the sky wishes. I wish it had never happened in my time. Yeah, who doesn't, Frodo? So, but it is not so. It's not chance. So if it's not chance, is it? We're kind of getting into the position of Greek mythology and Greek belief system, and then via that, the Judeo-Christian system. If it's not chance, is it fate? Because the Greeks essentially said, it's one of these two. Believe, rather, that it is so ordered. So ordered. Things have been put in such a place. It's like the chessboard has been set with not opening moves by each side, but it's been set and they find themselves on the chessboard with certain pieces already at play. And how does it look? The white numbers are outnumbered. The white pieces are outnumbered. Maybe their queen is gone. And probably the king too. Whereas the black side has them both. And all their bishops and knights. And believe rather that it is so ordered that we who sit here and none others must now find counsel for the peril of the world. Just, little pressure. Weight of the world is on their shoulders. So, now things shall be openly spoken that have been hidden from all but a few until this day. And first, so that all may understand what is the peril, the tale of the ring shall be told from the beginning even to this present, and I will begin that tale, though others shall end it. Why will Elrond begin it? He was there at the beginning. Okay? So he goes through and he tells his tale. 243. He pauses at the top. I remember well the splendor of their banners. Whose banners? The hosts of Gil-galad and Elendil. Okay. Gil-galad, elven king. Elendil, human king. Descendant, half elven kind of. It recalled to me the glory of the elder days and the hosts of Beleriand. See, back, when I had up here the other day, you had the world now, and it's a ball, and the world before, and it was flat. And I said, this is Middle Earth. Well, they didn't call the realm on this side of the sea Middle Earth. It was called Beleriand. Almost another world. Almost, not literally, another world entirely. Because when the world was remade, the ocean came over and took a lot of the land away, covered it up. Yeah, I can't go there yet. So, and he talks about, when Thangora-Drim was broken, blah, blah, blah. Frodo. You remember, because he's looking at Elrond, and he looks, like not a day passed, a year. But I thought the fall of Gil-galad was a long age ago. Go back to the appendices. You can see how long ago it was. It was. But my memory reaches back even to the elder days. Arendil was my sire, his father, who was born in Gondolin before its fall. My mother was Elwing. Okay, so let's put this down. So we have Elrond, Arendil, who was born in Gondolin before its fall. His mother was Elwing. Sorry, put this over here. Mother was Elring, daughter of Dior, not the fashion designer, son of Luthien and Beren. And who was Luthien? Thingol and, he doesn't name his great, oh, what is her name? Drawing a blanket. Daughter of Thingol and a Maya, one of those supernatural, angelic-like beings. Right? So, Elrond, Arendil, Elwing, Dior, Luthien, Beren, Thingol, and Maya. This all goes back to the first age. Okay? Galadriel is like born, wakened way back here. I mean, she's lots older than Elrond. I have seen 3 ages in the west of the world, and many defeats and many fruitless victories. Familiar with the phrase? 2 R's, I believe. A Pyrrhic victory goes back to the Punic Wars between Rome and Carthage in the 2nd, 3rd century BC, where a guy named Pyrrhus won a victory, but it was a hollow victory. I mean, he got, I won. But actually, in real consequences, lost. So, I was the herald of Gil-galad, marched with his host. I was at the Battle of Dagorlad before the Black Gate of Mordor. Frodo is going to go to that site. All right? He's going to see the remnants, I don't know what to call them, the dead from that battle. Okay? Before the Black Gate, for the spear of Gil-galad, blah, blah, blah. He says, I was there when Elendil fell and Narsil broke beneath him, and when Isildur cut the ring, and so Boromir jumps up. Okay? He says, Isildur took it. Yep, Elrond says he did. As should not have been, it should have been, bottom of 243, it should have been cast into Orodruin's fire nigh at hand where it was made. Well, you know, if you look at the map, it's not quite nigh at hand. The Black Gate is in the northern part of Mordor. Orodruin is kind of the south central part. It's a couple 100 miles. Okay? But he wouldn't listen to our counsel. Why not? What does everybody at one point or another say who owns the ring? Mine. My precious. Yeah. Okay? And he said, this I will have as weregild, an old English term for my father and my brother. Old weregild. Were, W-E-R-E, man, werewolf, man-wolf, okay? Man, guild, gold, price. It's the price that Sauron has to pay me for killing my father and brother, all right? So, he keeps talking. He says, did I say it was fruitless? Top of next page. Not entirely. Sauron was diminished, but not destroyed. What did Gandalf tell Frodo at the beginning of the Shadow of the Past? Always, when the shadow is defeated, it does what? It takes a respite, and then it takes new form. Okay? So he talks about what happened in the north after the war. The men of Western Essa were diminished. Their kingdoms kind of fell. Gondor endured and such. Okay. So he ceases, page 245. And then Boromir says, let me talk now. Why? Because he wants to talk about Gondor. Now, what did Elrond just say about Gondor? You know, it's kind of held firm, but it won't last. And Boromir's like, man, don't be dissing Gondor. The only reason you guys can have your little peaceful kingdom here is because Gondor, you know, is the bulwark kind of blocking Mordor. Believe not, he says, 245, right in the middle, that in the land of Gondor the blood of Numenor is spent, nor all its pride and dignity forgotten. Okay? So he goes on, keeps talking. And on page 246, he recounts a dream. Okay? He says, in this evil hour, I have come on an errand over many dangerous leagues to Elrond. 110 days I have journeyed all alone. Like, look at me. I'm strong and powerful. But I do not seek allies in war. The might of Elrond is in wisdom, not in weapon, blah, blah, blah. So he says, on the eve of the sudden assault, that is the assault of Gondor, of Mordor, against Osgiliath, okay, a dream came to my brother. Notice his brother isn't named. In a troubled sleep. And afterwards, a like dream came oft to him again and once to me. So this dream, we'll name him, comes to Faramir many times. That's what oft means. And it came once to Boromir. What is this telling us without telling us?
Boromir's not the right one to be there.
The dream came to Faramir. In that dream, he says what he saw, and he hears these words. Seek for the sword that was broken, in Imladris it dwells. There shall be counsels taken, stronger than Morgul spells. There shall be shown a token that doom is near at hand, for Isildur's bane shall waken, and the halfling forth shall stand. Okay? And he says, we didn't have a clue what it meant. Okay, we knew what Imladris was. That's where Elrond is. Sword that was broken? Whoosh, no idea. Halfling? What the heck is a halfling? And so Aragorn stands up. And he throws his sword on the table. Notice it's broken. Therefore, what kind of sword is it? Useless. You can't kill anybody with you can if they're very close and they don't have any armor. Here's the sword that was broken. Boromir, and who are you? What have you to do with Minas Tirith? Okay, put that in modern words. Don't put it in Tolkien's archaic language. What's he really asking?
What's so special about you?
Yeah. Who the hell are you? And what do you have to do with it? My home. Okay? Notice who comes to Aragorn's defense. I don't remember if this happens in the film, but in the film, there's a lot of tension between Aragorn and Elrond. There's none of that tension in the book. Why? That tension, it just does not exist. Yes, Aragorn must do something before he can marry Elrond's daughter. Just like Beren had to do something before he can marry Thingol's daughter. Human, elf, elf. Aragorn, human, elf, elf. Beren and Luthien are being replayed out. Okay? He is Aragorn, son of Arathorn, says Elrond. He is descended through many fathers from Isildur, Elendil's son of Minas Ithil. What does that mean? Go ahead.
He's the descendant of the one that defeated Sauron.
He's the descendant of the one who cut the ring off Sauron's finger. Okay, cool. You can, bragging rights. What else is he, though? Heir to the which one?
Gondor.
Of Gondor. Not just the northern line. He's the, let's use T.H. White's formulation. Once and future king. Return of the King, 3rd volume. Okay? He's chief of the Dunedain in the north, and few are now left of that folk. Frodo, thank God, or thank the power that ordained, Then it belongs to you and not to me. Because Frodo's been listening, right? Isildur cut the ring off and claimed it for his own. Descendant of Isildur, family heirloom. Here, Aragorn, I can go back home. As if he expected the ring to be demanded at once. Aragorn, no. Doesn't belong to either of us. And so Gandalf says, bring out the ring. Hold it up. Then Boromir will understand the remainder of his riddle. Everybody turns their eyes to Frodo. Notice, he has to stand up. I like to imagine he has to get up on the table so everybody can see him. And he pulls the ring out. And Elrond says, behold, Isildur's bane. And notice what Boromir's eyes do. They glint. And again, I think there's only one instance in the entire novel when somebody's eyes glint and it's not negative. And that's Tom Bombadil replying to, who are you, master? The halfling. Is then the doom of Minas Tirith come at last? What did the line say? That doom is near at hand. It doesn't say the doom of Minas Tirith. It just says judgment. Okay? So Aragorn corrects him and teaches him how to read and interpret. He says, here's the sword of Elendil, blah, blah, blah. Now notice how he finishes. You've seen the sword that you have sought. What would you ask? Do you wish for the house of Elendil to return to the land of Gondor? Do you want the house of the kings to return? Because what would that mean for Boromir personally?
He would no longer be the heir of them.
He'd no longer be the heir to the steward. What does a steward do?
Watches the thing until
Keeps the grass mowed, keeps the weeds down, takes care of things. A caretaker until the rightful owner returns. I was not sent to beg any boon. Boon meaning reward. Beg. Is that what Aragorn asked? What's that tell us about Boromir?
He's very proud.
Arrogant would not be too strong. Okay? But we are hard pressed. If the sword of Elendil could come back. What is this sword equated to in our world? Another sword, by the way.
The sword in the stone.
Named Excalibur. This would be like Excalibur being discovered. You know, I brought in the other day that Smithsonian article about, King Arthur and stuff. Assume for a moment that we actually found King Arthur's supposed tomb. And it had inscribed in it in Latin carving, here lies Arthur with no body, just to, do the Avalon thing. But they did find like a sarcophagus type thing with a sword that says, I am Excalibur. The lady in the lake gave me to Arthur. I mean, historians world over would be going, crazy. Just solid proof, Unless, somebody, it's got to be a fake, Yeah, like somebody in the 5th century's really got a fake thing. And I mean, it's dated 5th century and on, okay? If such a thing could indeed return out of the title of the 2nd chapter of the 1st book, out of the shadows of the past. What's he mean?
The stories.
If the fairy tales are real. He looks at Aragorn and there's doubt in his eyes. And then Bilbo stands up, And he recites the lines. And Aragorn smiles and turns to Boromir and says, for my part, I forgive you. I forgive your doubt. Little do I resemble the figures of Elendil and Isildur as they stand carven in their majesty in the halls of Denethor. I am but the heir of Isildur, not Isildur himself. I've had a hard life and a long, and the leagues that lie between here and Gondor are a small part in the count of my journey. In other words, shut up about the 110 days by yourself. Boo-hoo. He says, that's like an inch compared to what I've done. I've crossed many mountains, many rivers, trodden many plains, even into the far countries of Rhûn and Harad, where the stars are strange. That's right, it's not in the front of this one. There's a map in the back of your book. There are several maps in the back of your book, because Tolkien was a map nerd. So, Rhûn, way over here. Right now, they're here in Rivendell. Okay? Boromir came from down here, Gondor, up here, and he says, this is a small distance. He's been way over here, and he's been in far Harad. It's off the map, folks. Aragorn's telling us he's been to pretty much all the known world.
He also mentions the stars were strange, meaning that he traveled enough distance to likely change hemispheres, or at the very least be in an area where none of the stars are familiar.
Go across the equator, and you no longer see the Big Dipper. It's in the northern sky. You see the Southern Cross. Okay? You no longer see Polaris, the North Star, once you go across the equator. It's probably what he's getting at. Yeah, Rhûn and Harad, where the stars are strange. He says, but my home, it's in the north, blah, blah, blah. So he goes on, middle of 248. You know little of the lands beyond your bounds, that is, beyond Gondor. Peace and freedom, do you say? Because Boromir has said, if it were not for Gondor, there would be no peace and freedom in the rest of the world, so to speak. The North would have known them little but for us. Fear would have destroyed them. But when dark things come from the houseless hills or creep from sunless woods, they fly from us, whatever these dark things are. Notice he doesn't just come out and say orcs or goblins. What roads would any dare to tread? What safety would there be in quiet lands or in the homes of simple men at night if the Dunedain were asleep or were all gone into the grave? And then you get this paragraph. And yet less thanks have we than you. Travelers scowl at us, and countrymen give us scornful names. Strider I am, to one fat man who lives within a day's march of foes that would freeze his heart. That's Parliament Butterbur he's talking about. Okay? Or lay his little town in ruin if he were not guarded ceaselessly. Yet we would not have it otherwise. We, the Dunedain. If simple folk are free from care and fear, simple they will be. Okay? Now notice that. If they're free from care and fear, then they will be simple. He's kind of implying cares, problems, and fears are what remove the simpleness of mind. He doesn't mean that they're, intellectually undeveloped. It means they don't have the big problems to deal with. They're little problems they have to deal with, like, ooh, I'm running out of beer. Or, ooh, I'm running out of pipeweed, And he says, and we wouldn't have it any other way. And we must be secret to keep them so. What's he mean?
He doesn't want them to know that they're different than them and they're simple.
He doesn't want them to know that they are protected. Why not? Why not have the ticker tape parade down the east-west road that goes to the middle of Bree? Why not let everybody in Bree know this isn't just Strider? This is the heir of the kings of Gondor. This is, the last remnant of the men of Westernessa. In our world, what are the men of Westernessa? Atlanteans from Atlantis. Westernessa is Tolkien's reworking of the myth of Atlantis. Because yes, the island does sink when the world is remade. This has been the task of my kindred while the years have lengthened and the grass has grown. In other words, you at least get some credit. We don't get any. And guess what? We don't want it. Talk about stewardship. But now the world is changing once again. It's not physically changing. It's spiritually kind of changing. A new hour comes, Isildur's bane is found, battle is at hand, the sword shall be reforged. I will come to Minas Tirith. Notice, there's no request there. It's, you like it or not, I'm coming. You say Isildur's bane is found. I've just seen a ring. Prove it. Prove this is what you say it is. All right. You will. Don't worry. Okay. So Bilbo tells his tale, which includes where he got the ring. And we're told, Glow's like, not the story I heard. If you have a first edition, very, very early printing of The Hobbit, Tolkien rewrites the scene with Gandalf, the scene with where Bilbo explains to Gandalf about the ring. I think that's it. It's revised. He changes some of the elements, right? So they keep talking. Gandalf talks about going in the necromancer's lair, Dol Guldur, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to skip a whole bunch. And he talks about his researches into the ring, what he's read in the archives at Minas Tirith and such. Okay. He talks about taking Frodo's ring, throwing into the fire, page 254. And he says, this I have done and I have read. And he recites, Ashnaz Gdurba Tulak, Ashnaz Gimbatul, Ashnaz Thraka Tulak, Agburzum Ishi Krimpatul. And he probably, the way some people like to think of this, he, signaled to somebody in the back who dims the lights as he reads this because everything gets dim. Elrond's kind of pissed. Never before has any voice dared to utter words of that tongue. Why? What's that like uttering? It's like speaking German in the halls of Parliament during World War II. You just don't do it. Okay? And Gandalf, and let's hope nobody ever does again. If we don't win, guess what? Everybody's going to be speaking German or Chinese or Russian or pick your, language of evil, so to speak. And so he translates it for everybody. And they talk about Gollum, and he's in prison, and then this is sorry, not in prison anymore. He escaped. Okay. Gollum gets up, he has some bad words. And notice Peter Jackson takes this little scene. It's less than like 2 minutes long. It blows it up to the whole Council of Elrond, and people are at each other's throats and such. Okay? So Gandalf tells his story. What's the big news that comes out of his story?
Saruman's bad.
Saruman has been turned, if you want. Okay? Talks about being captured by Saruman. And Saruman says, you're not going to leave my tower again. 258, 259. He's, ridicules Radagast the Brown, which if you've seen The Hobbit, you could understand why he would ridicule Radagast the Brown. Utterly asinine. Top of 259. Saruman explains he's now Saruman the Wise, Saruman the Ringmaker, Saruman of many colors. And Gandalf says, and I noticed, what I thought was white isn't white. They were woven of all colors. And Gandalf, pithy as he always is, I liked white better. White, Saruman. It serves as a beginning. White cloth may be dyed. The white page can be overwritten. And the white light can be broken. How? How do you break white light? Louder?
Darkness.
Nope.
Introducing another color of light.
Nope. What's another word for break?
Destroy.
Divide. What is white light made of?
All different colors.
All the colors of the spectrum. Get a prism, shine the white light through a prism, and what do you get? Roy G. Biv. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. That's breaking the light into its constituent colors. And then you could go infrared and, etc. In which case, it is no longer white. We go back to what I said about what Tolkien says in the essay on Beowulf. If you break something to find out what it is, and he that breaks a thing to find out what it is has left the path of wisdom. So if you leave the path of wisdom, what path are you then on? What's the opposite of wisdom?
Foolishness.
Foolishness. Saruman, don't talk to me like that, So, what is Saruman's whole point in this scene? What's he want to do?
Use for his own gain.
Okay. He wants to turn Gandalf, right? What's his appeal? Notice what he says. And listen, Gandalf, my old friend and helper. I said we, for we it may be, if you will join with me. A new power is rising. Against it, the old allies and policies will not avail us. Okay? He says, that power is going to win. It would be wise, Gandalf. There is hope that way. We can join with that power. Its victory is at hand. As the power grows, its true friends will also grow. And the wise, such as you and I, with patience, may with patience come at last to direct its courses, to control it. Now, this, I think, is just showing us Tolkien's sheer genius. Why? Because the United States government followed this policy for many, many, many years in regards to one of our greatest economic competitors. Okay? Throughout the mid-'80s, up until early 2000s, I think, every year, Congress had to grant MFN, Most Favored Nation, trading status to China. This is before China got in the World Trade Organization, which happened during the second Bush administration. Okay? They had to vote. They had to prove every year Most Favored Nation trading status. Why? Because that then kind of shunted aside a lot of problems a variety of members of Congress and general Americans had with how China treated its own people, its humanitarian crimes. There's no other word to describe it. Okay? Why did we do that? Well, one pure economic reason. They were producing stuff that we imported and buy. Why? Because it was cheap. I mean, when you can force people to work for almost nothing an hour versus over here in the United States, labor unions, costs, all that kind of stuff. Right? It's one reason. So we granted them that and overlooked all these other problems. And what was one of the other reasons? The United States, collectively, in the form of its government at least, thought, if we engage with China, we can help them become more humanitarian. We can help them become more Western in thinking. Has it worked? Ask the Uyghur or Uyghur, however you pronounce their names. Hasn't worked. The United States tried the same thing with Iraq. We were trying the same thing with Afghanistan, trying to impose this kind of mindset on a people who aren't prepared for that kind of mindset. Notice, that's not a value judgment. Where does the Western mindset come from? It comes from 2,500 years of Western intellectual development. I'm not saying China doesn't have its own intellectual development. It does. And a lot of it's beautiful. But it doesn't have some of the same values and virtues that the Greco-Roman Judeo-Christian mindset has. Okay? So what does Gandalf ultimately say? Because he moves beyond. Saruman moves beyond. We can ally ourselves with God. Okay, you don't want to do that. I understand. He says, we could do what? We could take the ring. We could share it. And Gandalf's like, how are you going to do that? Shrink her fingers down, out like Cinderella, cut half yours off, and we'll walk hand in hand, You get it Mondays, Tuesdays, Fridays, and I get it Wednesday, Thursday, and we put it away, set it, and not going to work that way. Okay? So, Gandalf talks about how he escaped, Gwaihir the Wind Lord, all that kind of stuff. And we get to 265. Okay? And who gets brought into the discussion? Tom Bombadil. Why? Because Frodo mentions what happened when they were at Tom Bombadil's. And remember, Tom asks for the ring, and Frodo gives it to him. Tom has the ring, and he looks at it and does this. He flips the ring in the air, and it disappears. And Frodo goes, ah! And he's like, calm down, calm down. He's a magician, Here it is, here it is. And he gives it back to Frodo, and Frodo puts it on, and he tries to slip out the door. And Tom says, where are you going, Frodo? I can see you. I mean, we were in the Twilight Zone, right? The ring is supposed to make you invisible. Like the invisibility cloak, the real one, is supposed to make you completely, totally invisible. And yet, there are people who can see, I almost said Frodo, Harry when he's under it. Big, huge flaw. This, however, is not a flaw. This is telling us something about Tom Bombadil. So they were like, oh, he should have been invited. Gandalf, he wouldn't have come. Can't we send messages? No. Because Aristor says it seems he has a power over the ring. Gandalf, no. Say rather, the ring has no power over him. Why? He is his own master. Tom is what? Remember the other day I had the word dependent? D from, out of, pendant, hanging. Tom says, who are you yourself, alone, nameless? Tom doesn't depend, hang from anyone. That's what Gandalf means. He's his own master. Well, within Tolkien's cosmology, there's only one being that is ultimately his own master, and that's Eru Ilúvatar. Does that mean Tom is somehow a manifestation, an epiphany of? I don't know. I wish Tolkien had made it clear somewhere. Okay? So he's withdrawn into his little land. Within bounds he has met. Aristor, we can send the ring to him. He can hide it. No. He wouldn't do it, at least not willingly. Glorfindel, besides, it would only postpone the evil day. Notice what Glorfindel's point is. It's the exact same one Gandalf raised with Frodo back in the Shadow of the Past. We must decide what to do with the time that we have left. And that means what?
There's a finite amount of time.
And not passing the buck off to the next generation or to somebody else. Okay? And that's why he says Bombadil will fall. If all the rest of Middle-earth falls, and you only have Tom Bombadil, he'll fall too. Last as he was first. Okay? So Galdor says, surely there's somebody among us who's strong enough to take it. Elrond, not me. Nor these others that you mentioned. Galadriel, Círdan, etc. Glorfindel, okay, so if the ring can't be kept from Sauron forever, then there's only two things we can do. One, send it over the sea. What's that a fancy way of saying? Passing the buck. Okay. What do you mean send it over the sea? Send it to the gods. Or destroy it. Elrond, Gandalf's already said we can't destroy it. At least not by any craft we possess. And they're not going to take it. Why? Not our problem. We didn't make it. Okay, let's throw it in the ocean. Let's take a ship, go off to the Marianas Trench, the deepest point on the face of the earth, and weight it and drop it. Gandalf. Yeah, that would hide it for a really long time, but it's not going to solve the problem forever. Notice, we've got to solve this problem for good. We should seek a final end of this menace, even if we do not hope to make one. We should seek the destruction of the ring, even if we don't think we'll be successful. What is that kind of the definition of?
Hail Mary.
Hail Mary? Fool's errand? Suicide? Okay? And finally, page 267, Aristor says, well, then there are but two courses. Hide the ring forever or to unmake it. Both are beyond our power. Who will read this riddle for us? Read there doesn't mean read, like who will read? It means advise. It has the Old English meaning of the Old English word rad, which looks like this, which is the word from which we get modern English read. We only use it in this sense in one context today. If you get arrested, what must the police do? They must read you your rights. Now, that doesn't mean that all cops, have an IQ of 85. You are advised to, it means to be advised of your rights. Okay? So Elrond says, nope, none of us can do that, so we've got to send the ring to the fire. Notice, nice little euphemism. Doesn't explain, doesn't declare specifically what that means. To the fire means what? Sauron's backyard. In silence. Okay? Who speaks up? Before
Bilbo.
Boromir. Why? This is utter foolishness. Okay. If the ring were the atomic weapon, what's Boromir advocating? Nuke them. Just take them all out. He's saying, we could use this. Come on, some of you guys. I mean, you're elf lords. Come on. And if you want, well, I know some men who will do it. Give it to me. And they're like, hello, have you not been listening? Okay. So, 269. Aristor says again, okay, so we can't use it. We know that. It's going to turn anybody. And he says, top of 269, that is the path of despair. Of folly, I would say, if the long wisdom of Elrond did not forbid me. Gandalf, despair or folly? It's not despair. Why? Because despair is only for those who see the end beyond all doubt. Who see the final culmination. Do any of them, Gandalf is suggesting, know how everything is going to work out? No. They don't see the end of this, or the third option that Elrond kind of implied, that, you were called by something else. So, you can only have despair if you know 100% how it ends. He says it's wisdom to recognize necessity. Necessity. That's kind of this. When you have no other choices. When all other courses have been weighed, though it may appear as folly to those who cling to false hope. Notice, he brings in false hope. Why? Because there is real hope. What's the real hope? There's a 1% chance that this will succeed. 1% is not 0%. Neither is it 99%. In other words, it's pretty bad. Probably not going to do it, but maybe. Okay? And he brings in how Sauron thinks. What does he say Sauron will never intellectually come to?
The idea that they want to destroy it.
Why? Harry Potter, Mad-Eye Moody tells Harry at one point, decent people are what? Anybody know? So easily able to be tricked. Why? Because they think everybody thinks like they do. Now, I'm applying that to here. I'm not saying Sauron is decent. Sauron thinks everybody thinks like he does. How does he think? People are naturally rotten. And people will take whatever advantage they can to get over somebody else. Okay? And so nobody volunteers. And Frodo says, after Bilbo, and they're like, shut up. Frodo, I will take the ring, though I do not know the way. And Elrond says, this is bottom of 270. If I understand aright all that I've heard, I think the task is appointed for you, Frodo. Appointed. It's not like, Frodo, we secretly took a vote. You're it. Tag. Go destroy the ring. No. He says, if you don't find a way, no one will. This is the hour of the Shire folk when they arise from their quiet fields to shake the towers and councils of the great. It's not the stupid, trite, banal line that Galadriel says in the film, something about, it's time for the inconsequential, nameless common folk to overthrow the powers of, It's a little deeper than that. So, now we can skip a whole lot. How many Black Riders are there?
9.
So, what are they going to come up with?
9.
9 walkers. Or the Fellowship of the Ring, right? Who's in that fellowship? Who should be the first person you name? Duh. Frodo. And if you know Frodo's going, who else do you know is going? Sam, because you can't break him away. Now who goes? Gandalf.
Merry and Pippin.
You said Gandalf the
Gray.
Gray at this point. Okay. Gandalf. Aragorn, or if you want Strider. Okay. Who else? Gimli. Why? Representing the dwarves. Boromir. Why? Because he's going back home. In Gondor South. Okay. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Legolas. Why? Representing the elves. So notice we have the United Nations here, essentially. Okay? And there's 2 more. Yeah, but before we get Pippin and Merry named, who do they think? I mean, it's like Gandalf and Elrond are kind of decide, who are we going to send? And, this is Glorfindel, a powerful elf lord, or some other elf lord and such. And Gandalf says, when Merry and Pippin say, hell no, we're going, Gandalf says to Elrond what about Merry and Pippin? Why them? Trust to friendship, he says, rather than strength. Okay? So Elrond's pretty cool about saying yes to Merry. He's not cool to saying yes to Pippin.
My poor buddy.
For 2 reasons. One, because he's an airhead. He's just a dummy. Okay? He doesn't take things seriously. What's the more important reason?
Isn't it because he kind of snitched about saying what the hobbits were kind of on the bus for?
No, not really. That's part of his being airheaded.
He's too young.
Kind of. It's not really the reason. What does he want Pippin to do?
Go back to the Shire.
He wants to send him back to the Shire for what purpose? Punishment? No.
Coverage.
Warning. He wants Pippin to go back to prepare the Shire. And we could skip to the scouring of the Shire. Why? They didn't get warning. So Pippin goes. And, should I jump? How many of you are in the 2 towers yet? Okay, you better start, take Evelyn Wood's speed reading course, because you need to really be in there. Is Pippin coming? It is Pippin's coming that causes a huge catastrophe. If Pippin hadn't been there, something wouldn't have happened later on. That something that wouldn't have happened later on would have been the downfall of the entire project. Okay? Because Gandalf persuades Elrond he should be there. I'll give it away. It's something to Gandalf. All right? And it's pretty important. So, are they going to ride horses? No, they're going to walk. They're going to be the 9 walkers. So the ring goes southward. But before it does, what does Boromir do? He blows his horn. Both literally and kind of figuratively. Okay? And Elrond's like, it's there on the Orne in my land, So they go south, and they try to go over one of the mountain passes, Mount Caradhras. Right? What happens? 10 minutes, 12 minutes. Snow. Just, it's wintertime. It's snow. It's a high mountain pass, right? No. It's like the spirit of the mountain doesn't want them going over. So they take another path. Rather than going over the mountain, they're going to go under the mountain and through the mines of Moria. Why do they not want to go through the mines of Moria?
Because it was ruled by the orcs for a long time, and they haven't heard anything from Balin after he went to go and retake it. So, who knows?
And what kind of foreshadowing do we get? Before they go in, okay, they come to the doors of Durin, and there's the lake out there, and Gandalf's like, oh, Elvish, Dwarvish, but it's written in Elvish letters. And it says Melon, and he's like, Melon. And he's got to figure out what it means. And he finally does. Say friend and enter. And then he's like, it's not say friend, it's speak friend. Melon, it says, say the word for friend. Melon. The door's open, okay? But before that, as they're making their way, who warns Gandalf? Aragorn does, right? And he says, I say to you, beware the mines of Moria. Well, Frodo over here is saying, he's like, Aragorn's afraid to go in this place. But Aragorn is the one who tells all the others, I've been with Gandalf on a lot of journeys. He's never been wrong. Right? Okay. So they go in, and what do they find? They find Balin's tomb. And they find the Black Book of Mazerpol. I've seen this. Okay? I wasn't able to hold it because it was under glass. At the Tolkien Archives at Marquette University in Marquette, Wisconsin, they bought the manuscripts, or the manuscript if you want, of The Lord of the Rings in the late 50s. They got it for steal. I think it was like 10,000 pounds. Because Tolkien had a massive tax debt. I mean, Catholics, they just ripped him off, essentially. Well, you go into this room, and it's about the size of this. And it has all the manuscripts for The Lord of the Rings. All the maps, all the draft stuff, it's all there. The maps drawn by Tolkien. Okay? And he had a mock-up of this Black Book of Mazerpol. Handwritten, bloodstains, smoke, and fire. I mean, he burned the edges of the paper to make it look real. I mean, when he got into, he was like, one of those method actors who becomes the character they are. He little, right? And so they read about what happened, right? So we're going to skip a bunch. Who's excited about going into Moria? Why?
Because he still thinks that they're prospering.
Okay, he thinks Balin, they might still find Balin. What else? More important even than that.
He's going to get to see
See,
Khazad-dum.
He's going to see his ancestral homeland. Okay, I mean, this is the greatest thing in the world. Before they find the Black Book, they come in, there's this big guard chamber, and they're camping down for the night. This is their first night in. And they've rolled out their, little beds and stuff. And there's a big well in the floor. And Pippin goes up to the well and he finds a rock. He's like, I wonder how deep that is. And what happens immediately, Gandalf, before the other thing, says, Fool of a took! This isn't some hobbit holiday we're on. Next time, throw yourself in. And they start hearing that. And notice it's rhythmic. It's not... And Gimli's like, that's a hammer if I ever heard one. Gandalf's like, man, we really wish they would have stayed asleep. Okay? So they get attacked. Skipping a bunch. Chapter 5, Bridge of Khazad-dum. They get attacked, Frodo gets speared, but he doesn't die. And Gandalf pushes them all out of the guard room, and he goes to the door, and he blocks the door, and he does, puts a spell on the door. Something else comes and does a counter spell. So Gandalf puts a counter spell. It's like I double dare you, And then there's a counter spell, and the door breaks, and Gandalf runs down the stairs. Page 327. He says, what it was, I cannot guess, right in the middle of the page. But I've never felt such a challenge. The counterspell was terrible. It nearly broke me. For an instant, the door left my control. It began to open. I had to speak a word of command. And notice command there is capitalized. It's like, this isn't just some elvish word. This is something else. This gets back to Gandalf's real being, which we don't know yet what that is. Okay? So they make their way down, and they get to the bridge of Khazad-dum. There's this big chasm, and there's a little bridge that goes over, made out of stone, probably about 12, 18 inches wide. So you can only go one person single file. And something makes its way to that, because all the orcs just kind of go like Moses, whoosh, and they split. And they're yelling out the word, the orc word, for fire. Bottom of 329, top of 330. Legolas. A Balrog. A Balrog is come. Gandalf. Now I understand. What an evil fortune. And I'm already weary. Why is he weary? Because the spell's a word of command. Okay? What's a Balrog? We have no freaking idea at this point. Are we ever really told in The Lord of the Rings what a Balrog is, other than a servant of Sauron? No, we're not. I'm going to tell you. A Balrog is one of these. It's a Maya. It's a servant of Sauron. Sauron is also one of these. He's a higher one than the Balrogs. That's why they serve him. Okay? So, Gandalf tells them all to go over the bridge. They do. And then he gets up on the bridge. He walks out to the middle of it. He's standing there. He's got his sword, Orcrist or Glamdring. I always get it mixed up. Glamdring. And his staff. Okay? His staff does not have a nice little crystal on the end of it like they do in the stupid film. It's just a piece of wood. All right? He says, you cannot pass. I am a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Anor. That's the sword, Glamdring. You cannot pass. The dark fire will not avail you. Flame of Adun, go back to the shadow. You can't. Okay. He's kind of made it clear. You cannot pass. But what does he mean? I am a servant of the secret fire. Doesn't have to do with anything he's wearing. Don't give anything away. Or anything he has on his person. The secret fire, that goes back to the presence of Eru Ilúvatar. That's what Eru Ilúvatar creates Arda out of. In the Silmarillion, when the Ainur sing their songs, it's Eru who takes their song and puts it into reality, makes it reality. Gandalf says, I am a servant. What he's saying is of him. Guess what? Gandalf is also a Maya. The real Gandalf. Okay? Can Gandalf, the person in Middle-earth, die? Yes, he can. Okay? So the Balrog makes no answer. Notice it kind of hesitates. Secret fire. I remember that. We got kicked out. Okay. Glamdring, glitters in answer to the red sword. You cannot pass. Aragorn's like, we can't leave him alone. He cries out, Elendil. He pulls out his sword. Gandalf lifts his staff, cries aloud. He smites the bridge before him. The staff breaks. Okay, important little thing. Staff breaks, blinding sheet of white flame. The bridge breaks, and what does the Balrog do? Swings its whip, grabs Gandalf's legs, and he falls into the abyss crying, "Fly, fly, you fools!" And you can get on the internet and you can see what some totally moronic individuals think Gandalf means by fly, fly, you fools. There are people who think, utterly asinine, that Gandalf is saying, once you get out of the bridge, once you get out of Moria, signal to Gwaihir the Windlord and the Eagles, and they'll come get you, and they'll fly you to Mordor. And then you just drop the ring. Easy peasy. No. Okay? So, they get out of there, I don't know, 2 minutes, 1 minute, and they make their way to Lothlorien. Okay? Who do we know by this point, we already know, have seen, is following them? He's gone through Moria. He didn't go into Rivendell. Okay? But he's followed them from Rivendell, outskirts of Rivendell on. And where we're going to pick up is way late. The Mirror of Galadriel. For Thursday, we'll finish Fellowship pretty quickly, and we'll probably try to get to, we won't get to the end of book, take that back. We might get to, where'd it go? Oh, it's chapter 11. No, we won't get to the end of whatever that is, book 3. We'll definitely get, I don't know, we'll get in several chapters to Two Towers. So I would say, I don't know, try to get into chapter 9 or 10 at least of Two Towers. Don't forget the quiz due tomorrow night.
Yes.